Richard Barrett is a thought leader on the topic of human values and evolution of human consciousness. The founder of the Barrett Values Center and the Barrett Academy, and also a writer of many fantastic books, and I have just some of them here next to me. So Evolutionary Coaching was actually the book from which my connection to the Richard's work began. Then we have here Values Driven Organization, another fantastic book worth studying, as you can see, not just reading. What My Soul Told Me, another brilliant book. And I suppose the book which might resonate with many of you, because the topic which we will be talking about today is related to leadership, and this is the New Leadership Paradigm, another brilliant book Richard wrote. And the latest for me, which one I have not yet finished, on the way of it, is A New Psychology of Human Well-Being, and many, many others. So Richard, thank you so much once again, and I will pass the word to you to start our conversation.
Thank you so much. And well, and now I know why my book sales have gone up. I mean, I didn't realize that you were out hanging all these books. It's great. Anyhow, so it's a vast topic, so I'm going to just introduce it and give you my take on values, maybe what's going on in the world, etc., etc. So what are values? They're the energetic drivers of our aspirations and intentions. And there are two sources of our values. Mostly in this first source is really belief. So our ego has beliefs, but they can translate into values. And our soul definitely has values. So what is, I'll give you another definition of a value. Values we need is what we value. And so if you go online to the
Barrett Academy?
No, the other
Barrett Value Center?
Barrett Value Center, and do /PVA, Personal Values Assessment, you can get a free feedback on, and you put in your top 10 values. And I specialize in interpreting those, but the values that you pick are very interesting. Some of the values in your top 10 values come from your childhood, where you had unmet needs, and they became so important to you that now you stay with you still want that is one of your top 10 values. For example, the value of fairness. I was just in Germany doing a 5-day workshop and I interpreted some of people's personal values assessments, and it turned out that fairness actually came from a childhood where they weren't treated fairly, but then it became one of their top values. So that's one source of value, to kind of unmet needs from the childhood. Then there are soul values. Now, at the soul level, we share a lot of values because we are, well, let's do a little quiz, okay? This is I'm not going to ask you to stand up, but I'm going to ask you to raise
your hand or something.
Exactly. So I'm going to make a series of statements and then you can raise your hand, okay? It's going to sound very funny, strange, but you'll get the point when I finish. Okay, so put your hand up if you answer yes to the question, I have a television. All right, now let's put our hands up if I am a television. Okay, I have a car. Okay, I am a car. Okay, if you are a car, you better drive off and go somewhere else, because I'm not going to be talking about that. I have an ego. I am an ego. All right, I have a soul. I am a soul. Now, I couldn't see because the screen is flashing with all your people, but many people put their hand up. They know whether they have a television or they are a television, and most people are not televisions. But when you put your hand up for I have a soul and I am a soul, that is confusion at the highest level, because in my way of looking at things, you don't have a soul. No, nobody has a soul. You are the soul. You are the soul. And if you listen to your soul, you will have a fantastic life. If you ignore the soul, then you won't. And the problem is that the ego has needs. Most of these needs are not always, they're not always met in childhood. And so these needs go on for the rest of your life. And these unmet needs are always linked to beliefs about fear. So on the one hand, your ego has fear-based beliefs. And on the other hand, your soul wants to spread love. Now, the energy of love is not compatible with the energy of fear. So energy of fear drowns love. So the ego, when it is strong and has unmet needs, will prevent you from living a fulfilling life, because it will prevent the love of the soul coming through and in your life. Evolutionary coaching is a method of dealing with that, because there are 7 stages of psychological development. The first stage is surviving stage, which is from actually the moment of conception up to about the age of 2. And the needs of that stage of development are basically linked to the reptilian mind brain and the homeostatic function. So the baby has this desire to survive, to be fed, to be watered, and to be clean, and to be warm. And that's basically it. These are the needs of the baby at the first stage of development. The second stage of development is about 2 to 8, and this is when the limbic mind brain becomes dominant, and the baby needs to sense of belonging and care. And the third stage of psychological development begins around the age of 8 and goes on till, for many people, the rest of their lives, but usually up to about the age of 21, 22. I call this the differentiating stage. And the needs of that stage are to be seen, to be recognized, to be acknowledged. And if during these formative years, these needs were not met, you will develop what are called maladaptive schema, or limiting beliefs, which will keep, how you put it, prevent you from moving to the 4th stage of development, which is individuation, which Carl Jung talked a lot about. And this is where you find freedom, the freedom to be who you are, to let go of the conditioning of your parents and the culture you were brought up with, and be and find yourself, your true self. That's the individuating stage. Now, the 5th stage, having found your true self, now the individuating stage is usually early 20s through the late 30s. In the 40s, we move into the self-actualizing stage, as described by Maslow. And in this stage, we're trying to find meaning and purpose in life. Actually, what we're trying to do is to self-express. The soul is trying to self-express. And we find meaning and purpose by fully expressing who we are. Then in the 50s, integrating stage, we found our sense of purpose. We found out what brings us joy, and we now want to make a difference using that. And to do that, we have to connect, and then with other people. If you can't connect, you can't make a difference. And then in this 7th stage of development is service. And this is the stage of development, all you want to do is contribute to the world. So there is a 7th stage of development. They very much follow these years. You can accelerate a little bit. There are some young people, but it's who are a little bit more accelerated. But I put this model out many years ago, and I haven't really found too many people who diverge from that model. Now, so as a coach, your job is to find people, first of all, find that people's primary motivation. Generally speaking, that will relate to the age, which I just described. For the first 3 stages are actually linked to the development of the brain. And you won't be coaching ages usually, is when you get into the 20s, 30s, 40s, and you'll be dealing with the aftermath of the early childhood and the limiting beliefs that are holding them back. So the evolutionary coaching, first thing is what is the primary, what stage of development is somebody at? And usually you can tell with age, but there are questions in my book which help you to figure that out. And then the next job is to find out the secondary motivations. These are the unmet needs from the first 3 stages of development up to the age of 21, 22, because these needs hold you back. And the trick is to help people resolve and understand where these unmet needs come from, how they're being held back, and develop a way forward for this purpose, to deal with those unmet needs. So that's the basis of evolutionary coaching. Everybody's on this vertical journey, and it really depends on, your age, etc. Now, most of the world never gets past the third stage, the differentiating stage, because they're so stuck in their unmet needs from childhood. Now, I'm going to mention a politician. Please, I apologize for anybody who's political, but Donald Trump is a perfect example of somebody who has unmet needs from his childhood and can't get past the individuating stage of development. And it's too late for him now. He'll never get past. Our Boris Johnson in the UK, our Prime Minister, same story, still trying to get his unmet needs met from his early years. And these are not the type of people who will come to you for coaching. They're not really interested and they don't care. But hopefully the people come to you are questioning. They're, in other words, they're getting to the individuating stage and they're saying, there must be more to life than this. And that's where you come in and help them to understand their primary motivation, their secondary motivations that are holding them back from their childhood years, and help them to resolve that. And that's all of that's in the book Evolutionary Coaching. Now, at a global level, most of the leaders of the world fall into that first category, the first three stages of development. They haven't evolved, they haven't individuated, but there are some leaders who have. And it's interesting, perhaps the most well-known is the lady who is Prime Minister of New Zealand. I mean, this is a really evolved woman. Mm. Now, if you look at the Scandinavian nations, which are where the highest levels of well-being, most of the governments are led by women. So
how do you explain it, Richard?
Well, okay, I could give you a long explanation. I'll start on a long explanation, but I'll try and cut it short. 6,000 years ago, something happened, which really was the explosion of the male ego. Up to 12,000 years ago, we all lived in as clans, little family groups, and everybody supported survival, and so there was reciprocal exchanges. And then we settled down and we moved into tribalism. And again, it was the tribe was important, but again, what was important was the tribe, not the individual. So the egos were not nourished, were not encouraged. Mm-hmm. But then something amazing happened around 6,000 years ago. The glaciers of the last ice age were receding. And at this time, the Sahara region and all of the deserts in Asia, which were fertile land where people farmed and had animals, etc., with the receding of the ice, the weather changed. And all of these tribes that were in these fertile regions now couldn't survive. And the only way they could survive was to move. The whole tribes were to move into the regions where there already were tribes which were fertile, and try to take those areas over. And this meant power and force. And this is when the male ego exploded for survival purposes, and women took a very role. And we're still dealing with that issue. The issue of the male ego, the explosion of the male ego, it goes back to 6,000 years. Only in recent years has gender equality really become more of a topic, but it's it's not emphasized in very many countries. But this is the trend, and this is what happened. So most countries are still living, their cultures still are operating from the first three stages of development, and yet in these Scandinavian countries and the Switzerland and New Zealand, they've moved up to the individuating stage. And the well-being of the people in these countries has increased significantly, whereas in most other countries it's very difficult. I mean, there are many countries in the world, and if you're following the World Cup, Qatar is one of them, where gay people are absolutely penalized. I mean, it wasn't so long. I remember the beginning of my life, 50, 60, 70 years ago, we were still hanging gay people. So, I mean, we've evolved a lot. 100 years ago, women didn't have the vote hardly anywhere. So there's been a tremendous evolution. But the evolution has been at a personal level. And then what happens after that, societies change as you reach a critical mass. The society will change to a higher stage of development. So when you're coaching people through these stages of development, what you're actually doing is contributing to the evolution of consciousness of humanity. And there's no finer job than that, honestly. That's what it's all about. And where does it begin? It begins with children, actually. We need to revamp our whole education system. And the way we need to revamp it is to go back to what I just said. The soul incarnates to self-express, connect, and contribute. I call that levels 5, 6, and 7. We need to teach our children to self-express, connect, and contribute. Because if you can't connect, self-expression is all about finding out your inner gifts and talents. And we all want to find meaning and purpose by exploring our gifts and talents. Then connection is about how you make a difference. If you can't connect, you can't make a difference. And then contribution. If you want to be of service, then you have to make some sort of contribution. And if you can do all of those things, you will live a long, happy, and vital life. You will have upsets. You will have problems. You will have, if you have, you will have, sorry, I was just reading the note by Tracy. And I can't do, I'm a man. I can't do two things at the same time.
Don't worry about it, Richard. We certainly will come to the chat and the questions.
Yeah. So you see, it's all linked to the stages of psychological development. It's all linked to unmet needs and still trying to get those needs met. And every one of you on this call still has unmet needs from their child. I know that, I can guarantee it. If I saw your personal values, I'd be able to pick out, but some much more than others. I mean, the question is, can you master? I mean, if you get triggered, if you get angry and upset, it means you've got an unmet need from your childhood and you need to deal with that. Now, that's personal mastery. Now, the chances are that unmet need from childhood will still trigger you even after you worked on it, but it won't, if you learn personal mastery, it won't have the same effect on you. I remember when I met my wife 10 years ago, if she got upset, angry, I would get upset, and it would take me like 2 days to get over it. It was awful. And I've worked on that. And now I get triggered. I still get triggered, but it lasts a minute, 5 minutes, never a day or two. I mean, it's just like, oh, okay. Because the reason is because everything that happens in the world is neutral. You give it all the meaning it has for you, and you give it the meaning through your beliefs.
Yeah.
So when somebody, starts shouting at you and you feel upset, you say, this person has an unmet need, okay? And they're projecting this onto me. I can choose to be triggered and be angry back, or I can choose to realize that I'm just giving all the meaning based on my beliefs to what's going on. So we just did, it was funny, we just did a 5-day workshop in Germany on this. And one of the people, we shared on a WhatsApp group, and one of the people was heading back to Munich in their car afterwards, and they sent this little note, and it said, stuck in traffic jam. I could choose what meaning to give to this.
Sounds like you had a productive workshop.
very, very, very productive. And yeah, that's one of the things that one of my techniques is that I always say, well, every event is neutral. I can choose to give this any meaning it has me. If I get triggered, I can say I choose to give it a different meaning because that's an old belief from my childhood, which I don't need anymore. I know something else I use is everything's always perfect. It's like, okay, something happened. My God, it feels awful. But actually, that's only because of your belief about it. Usually when something difficult happens and a year later you think, oh my God, that was the best thing that happened to me. But at the time it was like, oh no, it preys on your mind. So the reason it's preying on your mind is because you're giving it a particular meaning. You can give it a different meaning. Roberto Assagioli, the famous who developed psychosynthesis, he said everything, what is it? It's like everything that you pay attention to dominates your, oh no, that's not what it is. I can't remember the exact, I'll remember in a minute. But basically it's everything you identify with, it's your mind. And so if you're having a sleepless night, you can choose to disidentify. And he has a famous meditation which goes along the lines which I teach at the in our workshop, which is I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have a mind, but I'm not my mind. I have emotions, but I'm not my emotions. I'm this pure center of energy.
Consciousness, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, I've been rambling on. I tried to cover for 15 minutes. Could go on for hours, but that's not the point of a cafe. So I'm going to shut up now. And
they're very, very grateful for, that's actually what you have already covered, answered a couple of my questions, but at the same time evoked, a couple of new questions. So you started talking about the importance of education and actually teaching the children to individuate and to learn how to basically prepare themselves for self-actualizing.
Well, prepare themselves for individuation. The self-actualizing will naturally follow.
Will follow, right? And I also, you mentioned about the Nordics countries, and well, I know that was their path through education to reach the high level of consciousness from which they are nationally operating now with. I also know that you've been working on the global curriculum for individuating. Would you like to share something about that aspect?
Okay, so this is a free resource. It's called the Humanity Awareness Initiative.org, www.humanityawarenessinitiative.org, all one word. And on there are many free resources and training programs. And the idea is to transform the world. I said, this is not a 1-year project, a 5-year project, a 10-year project. This is a 50-year project. And why? Because that's what the Nordic nations did in 1850. They developed this education program, which they put out into their centers, and young people went through that, and if they stopped doing it at the end of the Second World War, but it changed. It helped people to individuate, and that's why the cultures in these countries are so different, and that's why the well-being is so different, because they've moved into what I call people awareness. It's an individuating stage of consciousness, whereas practically all other nations are still operating at the differentiating stage. They're actually focused on power, authority, or status. Now, so they've proved that you can change the culture of a nation by education. And so the Humanity Awareness Initiative is exactly the same thing, is to build cohorts of people in nations who can take on this new curriculum, which is there. It's on the platform. So when you go to the humanityawarenessinitiative.org website, right on the front page, you can find a link to the learning community. If you go to the learning community, you'll find all these resources. Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really great to know. And can this also be adapted to the kind of a smaller level, to the organizational level?
Absolutely. It can be at any level, like personal, organizational, community. Yeah, I mean, these resources can be taken by people like yourselves, and you can teach using these free resources the people in your community.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Certainly very, very curious to give a good dive into the material which is in there. What do you think stop other countries to follow the example of Nordics?
Ego-driven male leaders.
Right. That's quite straightforward answer. I'm really looking forward to your opinion. I watched one of your interviews from 11 years ago, where you mentioned that we are having leadership crisis.
Yep. Still going on.
Many things, many things has happened during this 11 years.
It's a lot better, but it's still going on.
You see it's got better?
Slightly. There's more openness to my work. I know that, and I'm working with the leadership team now. I said to look, I'm happy to work with you, but took on, first of all, it's a 1-year program. It's not a weekend, and secondly, it has to include ego soul dynamics. And if you want to, if you accept that, I'll work with you. But otherwise, I'm not going to.
And did they?
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful.
Yes.
That's good to know. I'm always looking for, a sign of hope.
Yeah, no, there is some hope, but the old paradigm is still very, very strong. And as coaches, you're dealing with that old paradigm, and you could be, at the front line of this evolution of human consciousness. And that is my hope for you, every one of you, to be building a new and better world through an evolution of consciousness.
Which comes with awareness, first of all.
First of all, awareness. That's now, you mentioned my book, What My Soul Told Me. Two things to say about that. So the first thing is you have to be aware of your soul. Second, then the next thing is to befriend your soul. Then, second thing is connect with your soul. Then befriend your soul, trust your soul, and finally become one with your soul. Now, I've been on that journey for 30 years, and that's what I teach. And it's amazing what happens, because you can relax into life. Because when you're living from soul awareness, you have no needs, because you are your soul. Your soul created you. And so do you think it's going to abandon you? Absolutely not. It's going to help you to be fulfilled, because the soul wants to self-express, connect, and contribute. And so, if you get online with a program, you will be hugely successful. Now, as you know, Helena, last May or April, my soul said to me, stop writing books, start painting. And I said, okay. I'd written 14 books. I said, okay. So I found a really good teacher, and I started painting, and I created a website, and I don't know where I'm going, but it's beginning to be revealed to me as I follow the breadcrumbs. So what happened was I'm learning techniques, painting, etc., etc. And then about 6 weeks ago, I got the message from my soul: you're going to paint emotions. You're going to paint a whole series of 15, 20, 30 of emotions, and then you can use these paintings to help people understand emotions and feelings. And I'm going to do other things like landscapes, etc., etc., etc. So I started my new career. I'm 70. I'll be 78 very soon, and I'm starting my third career. And God, I'm loving it. And I just moved into my painting studio yesterday here in London. In the summer, I'm in Italy, and I have a studio there. And I'm like, and then, next thing I know, I'm getting commission from a company in Indonesia to do a painting for their boardroom. It's like, you don't know until you commit and surrender to your soul. You've got no idea what you're capable of. And so this means forget goals. I mean, anybody who tells me they have goals, I say, forget goals. You're just living in the past. You need to set an intention, because goals can limit you. You can say, oh, well, I'm going to get this and this and this. Well, actually, you could do better than that. If you set an intention, you've got no idea where you're going to go.
That was actually one of my questions, Richard, that when you are a leader and when you work in an organization, in a business, you're supposed to have a vision. You're supposed to have goals.
Oh, goals are rubbish. Forget it.
Right. So intentions and vision.
Intentions. Okay, there are 6 modes of decision making. All right. The first is instinct. Is born in the body. The baby survives through instinct. We still have instincts. It's the body mind. Then comes subconscious beliefs, which we learn in childhood. Then comes conscious beliefs, and most of the world operates in that spectrum. After that, we move into values-based decision-making. After values-based decision-making, we move into intuition. And after intuition, we move into inspiration. So at the soul level, you live in inspiration. That's your decision-making. So you don't have to think through. You just have to listen to what your soul is telling you, and then follow. And then you will, and as I just illustrated, my soul said, stop writing, stop painting. I'm following. I mean, my intention is to be the best possible painter I can be. Not the best painter in the world, no, but the best painter for the world.
Yeah. And this is what also kind of characterize the high level of consciousness when we move from I to we from
Yeah.
being best in the world for being best for the world.
So you move into high levels of consciousness as you change your identity. So when you were young, you identified with yourself and so you looked after yourself, and then you met a partner. And if you'd go on caring for yourself rather than you and your partner, you won't get anywhere with your partner. So now your identity expands to be two people. And then you have children. Now you need to expand your identity into the sense of family, because if you still focus on your own identity and meeting your own needs, you won't be in the family very long. And then you expand your sense of identity as part of an organization. And then you expand your sense of identity as part of a nation. And then you expand, community and nation. Then you expand your identity again, become a human, having a human connected to all other humans, a soul. I mean, a soul is an individual aspect of the universal energy field. So we're connected to every other soul. So synchronistic experiences are simple, normal experiences at the soul level. The soul can create whatever it wants, as long as you take fear out of the formula and allow the soul to do that. So it's like amazing things to happen to you when you live at the soul level, because the soul just organizes your life. And when I met my wife 10 years ago, I said, I have no needs. She laughed at me, but she understands now. I say that because I let my soul take care of my needs before I know
that they exist.
Yeah, and so then these days I says I have no needs, and then she says, why? I said, because I married you. Okay, so it all starts with understanding. So we have these so-called, I'm using a word, maladaptive shame. I explain that in the book. These are belief structures that hold us back and come from the first 3 stages of development. The first thing to do is to identify them. And you can do that very easily. I mean, with this workshop, you just read the book and you say, okay, so which of these do you resonate with? And they'll pick them out right away. And then you say, well, is this belief really true? It's just an old belief from childhood. They're still living that. And then you have to explain to them, and they can see that actually, this started when I was 5, when my father said XXXX. And then you say, well, do you still want to live in the past, or do you want to live in the future? I explain it all in the book, but basically you have to get understanding first. What is the belief that is holding them back, and how can they correct that belief? And that's in the time that we've got, that's the short answer, but it's I do this work all the time, so I know it works. But understanding is the first thing.
Yeah, so as we said, everything starts from awareness, and then basically to challenge these old scenarios, this maladaptive shyness, or the limiting beliefs which we have stored.
Yeah, and then you can teach them these principles I mentioned, like every event is neutral, everything is always perfect. And I say everything is always perfect. It's either perfect because it feels good, or it's perfect because it feels painful. Now, pain is a gift. We should celebrate pain because it's pointing exactly at what you need to work on. So when you're having a painful experience, emotional, it's pointing exactly what you need to work on in order to get back into alignment. It's the same with the body. If you go to the doctor and you say, I have a pain, he'll say, the first question he asks is, where is it? And you point to your knee. And now he knows where he has to work because the pain is telling him where he has to. It's the same emotionally. It's the same emotionally. What is the pain? What is the subconscious belief that is linked to the pain that you need to adjust in order to get back into alignment?
Yeah, thank you. We have also in the chat, Noelia mentioned pain, stress, anxiety, the warning signs.
And you need to get into them and experience them and understand them and say, well, wow, this is just a measure. Because you see, everything comes back to the energy field of the body. You are an energetic human being. You're not a physical human being. You're an energetic human being. And so if all of these energetic malfunctions show up in the body as not just as stress, but as illness. Let me give you a couple of examples, a male example and a female example. Women have great difficulty at the self-actualizing stage, which is the 40s, because usually they have a partner who has needs, they've got children who have needs, they've got aging parents who have needs, and who do they put last? Well, so that is the 5th stage of development. It's linked to the 5th chakra, the throat and the upper chest. So they develop breast cancer because they're not self-expressing. And I've, in my book, The New Psychology of Human Wellbeing, I trace all of this. With men, it's the next stage, integrating stage, the 50s, because men as boys are told not to show their feelings. Be strong, don't show your feelings. And so we learn not to connect at the feeling level. And so that 6th chakra, which is linked to the 2nd chakra, really leads to prostate cancer. So you notice that prostate cancer mainly occurs in the late 50s and early 60s, because it's obviously in men, because anyhow, but the point is, all of these illnesses are related to the stages of development and whether you're successful. And I list the leading causes of death and many issues in my book, A New Psychology, and I show how they relate to the stages of development and whether you're successful. And I list the leading causes of death and many issues in my book, A New Psychology, and I show how they relate to the stages of development. And so you can research what is the source of your illness. The source of all illness is in the mind. I mean, it's because we're energetic beings, we're not physical beings. You only got to do one thing. Only one thing. Take fear out of your life. Everybody on this call has got subconscious fear-based beliefs. Take fear out of your life. Surrender to your soul. The only thing that goals are important for is if you're playing soccer and you have to get the ball into the goal. Oh, that's fine. Goals limit you because your soul when you set your intention to surrender to the soul, the sky's the limit. And if you're setting yourself a stupid little goal, you're just holding yourself back. Potentially, you're holding yourself back. So get over it. Stop trying to hold yourself back by setting goals and set an intention. My intention right now is to be the best painter I can be. Okay, I could set a goal and say I want to sell 15 paintings this year. Well, rubbish. I might, if I set the intention of becoming the best painter I can be, I can probably sell 100 paintings this year, but the goal will just hold me back.
I would like to invite you with your question. With Ishil, we had a little exchange today, and she shared the question she wanted to ask you, and I think that's a nice bridge.
You made a segue into it. I actually noted a quote from the book, Richard, but now I don't have it, so I'm going to probably say it in my words. You actually say the essence that I got from it. You were saying in the book, Evolutionary Coaching, that as coaches, we support our coachees to leave the limiting cultures which suppress their emergence, human emergence.
Absolutely.
And then with that, so I am now the devil's advocate here, or I think I'm sharing my beliefs. As you said, when the societies change, when there is enough number of people who are in a higher level of consciousness. But
Correct.
If we leave when we are maybe in a higher place and we leave that place, how can the society or the culture that we were once belonging can rise up?
I don't follow your question, but the answer is work with children.
No, then I will give you my comment and then I will ask your opinion. So I think instead of leaving the cultures that are limiting our human emergence, if we stay and then push the culture.
Sure. Well, the thing is that this is why I put the Humanity Awareness Initiative and the learning community. There are all of these e-learning courses which enable you to help people evolve in consciousness and to take groups of hundreds of people through evolving in consciousness. And as they evolve in consciousness, they will shift out of I into we, and they'll move up the stages of development. I'm really not understanding your question, I'm afraid.
So it's basically, you know, I think that was from Tinyat Khan. Tinyat Khan, you brought the great example.
Yes, I brought an example that there was someone that went to Thich Nhat Hanh and said, well, I'm working in this place who is basically creating energy from detrimental products to the nature, and I don't want to work there anymore. I don't want to be part of this. And Thich Nhat Hanh said, well, if you leave, someone else will take your place. It's better someone with an open heart and consciousness like you stay there rather than someone else with a closed heart.
Yeah, that's wise, but it depends on the individual. It can be devastating for the individual. So it's the soul of the individual has to make the choice. You can't ask other people to advise you what to do. You have to listen to your own soul. And if your soul says stay, stay. If your soul says move, move. You don't follow advice from other people. You have a fantastic advisor right inside you. It's your soul. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just listen to it. Do what brings you joy, because joy is the domain of the soul. When you've experienced joy, you're experiencing soul consciousness. Do what brings you joy. You can't change the whole bloody world. Just focus
on. We do have this ambition.
There's ambition is just like goals. I mean, I would write off ambition. I mean, God, ambition and goals are just terrible. It's all ego stuff, you see. Goals and ambition are just ego stuff. The soul doesn't have goals. The soul doesn't have ambition. The soul just shows up and it is.
Thank you.
You don't want to measure your performance against other people, which is what ambition is about. I want to be the best of this and that. Okay, I want to be the best painter. I don't want to be the best. I want to be able to paint the best I can. I don't want to be the best painter. I don't care about being the best painter at all. I just care about being my best.
Yeah.
And so ambition is like, oh gosh, goals. Oh God. Recruit based on values. You know, find out what people's values are. You know, what is important to them, and match that with what the values of the company. It doesn't always work, because very often the company's values are on the wall, but they're not lived. And I don't know, you know, it's difficult to get around that. But yeah, if you're recruiting somebody to work with a level 3 organization, which is into performance excellence, making money at level 1, and the person you're recruiting has the same values, well, they'll fit in well there. I mean, it's like values fit how long they'll stay, because you have to sell your soul to work in an organization like that.
So Richard, thank you very much for being with us today. And that has been a great joy to learn from you and to learn from your wisdom. And I would like also to highlight there, you all can go to the Barrett Academy online as well, and to check the fantastic online courses which Richard put in there, which are about the personal transformation and the leadership transformation and organizational transformation as well, as far as I remember. So thank you very much, Richard, for the work you are doing. And
well, thank you very much for inviting me. I had a lot of fun.